ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to a break time stream here in the Storyteller's Corner. I'm your host, Joshua T. Calkins Truberty, also known as Byron Sidious. It isn't always just about what you have to say. A lot of it has to do with the quality of the telling. A few other times is this as vital a skill to hold on to as it is during any national, regional, or local political election cycle. I think this is part of what has been troubling me. Hey Cortex, how you doing, brother? About the current election cycle. I think it's a part of what bothered me about the last one too. It's something that nagged at me then. It's nagging at me now, but something that I did not quite have a firm grasp on until until yesterday when I was getting near the end of my break time ramble about how it was vital that we bear in mind that the creator of a narrative, the storyteller, the author, or the director or producer of a film or a show or a song, a music album or a painting or a book or a short story or whatever the artistic endeavor is, they don't owe the audience a artistic project or piece of art until they have created the best possible version of it that they can. Yet somehow, in the realm of the political arena, we are often handed these narratives that, quite frankly, could really use an editor's touch. I am not the person to turn to for political advice or socio political perspectives and questions unless you know me on a more personal level and you'd like to honestly get a gauge of how I feel about things. And I got to tell you, folks, 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to know what I'm actually talking about because I'm not an expert in this area. But what I would consider myself expert in is the realm, the field of narrative, stories. And there's something about the story that is not adding up on either side of the approaching United States presidential election cycle. Sure, we may have seen this year alone some rather bacchanal, off the walls kind of almost soap opera, weird style twists and turns, but they have not been unforeseeable. There were a number of people who've been sort of predicting as we go along, almost point by point, what was going to happen. We have known for, well, not, I say we, I don't mean a collective entirety of we, but there's been a lot of folks who, for months, for as long as half a year, were saying Biden's not going to be on the ticket for the Democratic Party. He's not got the mental health, the physical health, the acuity to do it. He's going to drop out. For months, I was hearing this from the socio political right leaning spaces. From the left leaning spaces, I was hearing no such thing. I was hearing merely Trump bad, Orange Man bad. He's a criminal. He's a bad duty head. He's Hitler. Uh-oh, I've invoked Godwin's law. But when weighed against the observable facts and circumstances of, I don't know, this crazy thing called reality, the stories didn't make sense. When you are constructing a story, whether it be a short story, a novella, a novel, whether it be a serialized tale told in chunks or chapters or sections over an extended period of time, even getting so long as to be an ongoing epic or series, you have world building mechanics. And once you have set up your world building mechanics and a priori understandings of how the world of your story works, sorry, any alteration to those rules and mechanics, any change has to be thoroughly explained to your audience, whether they be readers or viewers. Take, for instance, let's say teleportation in the Star Trek series of shows and films. We're given a basic understanding in, I believe it was Next Generation. It may have been the original series. I don't know, but I think it was in Next Generation where they explained in like season 2 or 3 that the basic premise of a teleporter is the device disassembles you molecularly down to an atomic level and then beams your data pattern, your molecular data pattern, to another location within range of the teleporter device and reassembles you at moments after having initially disassembled you at an atomic level. In the original series, I don't remember how they did the effect, but I do recall my older brother Newton telling me that the way they achieved the visual effect on Star Trek: The Next Generation was they would take like a glass of water and drop antacid tablets into it and swirl it around, put that swirl effect in front of the lens, and film through that effect, that visual effect, to create the visual look, the appearance of the teleporter special effect. I don't know if that's real. I don't know if I can't sit here and tell you with any authority if that's actually how they did it. If so, then kudos to them. Very ingenuitive. Um, but the point being, that was the basic premise as established in Star Trek: The Next Generation. Well, then in Deep Space Nine, uh, Chief O'Brien, who had been on Star Trek: The Next Generation, I really liked that they brought his character into DS9 and made him a little bit more central of a character, um, along with his wife Kimiko, I think it was. I got to rewatch Star Trek. Um, bad nerd, naughty. I have not been taking to my duties of refreshing my nerddom. Um, but as I recall, he tries to explain how a teleporter functions to his wife and to a couple of younger Starfleet like cadets and officers, and says something completely different about how the uh, the teleporter device scans your information and creates a copy of you at the destination point and then deletes the data of you in the initial location or something like that. Like just a reversal of the order. All I remember clearly is thinking, wait, you're changing the rules for no apparent reason. No explanation is ever given as to why they've decided to change how this technology functions within the guidelines of the Star Trek universe. I was left rather confuzzled and a little annoyed because let's face it, you have gone through a great deal of trouble to establish the function of a primary and consistently, repeatedly used mechanic throughout all of the stories and narratives that intersect with or are built upon the basic foundational premises of the Star Trek television shows and movies and books and what have you. And then you change it for no apparent reason and you don't give us any explanation. It causes this dissonance, this cognitive dissonance for those of us who've been paying attention. If you're only a casual fan and you miss a whole bunch of episodes, or if you're in the unfortunate position like myself where I haven't watched consistently in so long, I haven't done any rewatches that right now I can't even remember exactly what the difference in the explanations was. So I'm not suffering that dissonance. Honestly, right now I could just accept kind of blithely that, so they changed it, no big deal. But it should be a big deal if I was paying attention, and therein lies the rub. That's why I am unsettled by the narrative in the current socio-political environment here in this United States presidential election cycle because the narratives don't make sense. The world building mechanics, as previously established, do not have logical consistency across the narrative arc. Something is deeply wrong here. And there's a lot of people who can sense it. They can sense that something is wrong. Your average everyday citizen, like myself, for instance, who is just trying to work their job, make sure their bills are paid, make sure they and their significant other, and if they have any dependents, are fed, safe, sheltered, provided for. All of those things are becoming more and more expensive and difficult to maintain. And the more challenging that is, the less bandwidth we have with which to pay attention to things that are well beyond our ability to control or affect. If you know you have no possible means of changing how things are running right now, why would you bash your head against the wall in the hopeless pursuit of trying to stay abreast of things? It's almost easier to just allow yourself to slip into willful ignorance because what can you do anyway? That's doomer mentality. That's what people refer to as the black pill. Is well, shit's gonna happen anyway. What can I do? Nothing. Just let it happen. I'll deal with that when I get there. I'll burn that bridge when I cross it. Here's the problem: the bridge will already be burned if you don't take notice and try to hurry yourself and your loved ones across that bridge first, because the barbarian hordes are coming towards that bridge with pitchforks and torches in hand. They're going to destroy the bridge. You need to get across it. I know I'm mixing my metaphors, and I apologize for that, but this is important. So bear with me, please. I apologize for jumping all over the place, but the story doesn't make sense. The characters. Let's take a look at our primary characters in the framework of our current story. Let's say that this is the 2024 edition of this particular story series known as America. All right. Every 4 years, there's a great big chapter, chunk. There's an insert event. And we start off with a batch of, let's say, somewhere between 6 to 12 potential main characters for one of two different primary factions who we're going to wean our way down towards having one leader from each faction going to ideological war with each other in a civilized system of electioneering. Right? There will be third parties, there will be smaller factions, but for the most part, they're not going to control, dominate, or engineer anything that will cause much of a significant change in terms of who the big presenting teams are that will be responsible for the ultimate conflict at the end of this chapter or this entry into the series of stories. Right now, those primary characters are Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Those are our two main characters. And they are in competition with one another. Whoever is writing the story, they know who the protagonist is and who the antagonist is. Us as the readers, as the people living the story, we have our own perspective of who's the protagonist and who's the antagonist. I gotta say, if you're going by based on classic genre fiction tropes, I'd have to imagine that the antagonist would be the one who cackles like a fucking banshee demon that's damn near on the verge of cracking and their brain going sideways slipping out of sideways out of their skull because she's fucking hysterical and can't believe she's in the position now of, oh shit, I gotta put up or shut up. But again, I'm bringing my own bias to that and I'm aware of it. From my perspective, she is the antagonist. She is the witch queen. And then you've got your protagonist, who in this case is a brash and a ballsy, big swinging dick personality who talks a big game and asks the big ask so that when you try to finagle him down from the big ask, you're still coming to a spot where he wanted to get you to say yes anyway, and maybe even came away with a little more than he was initially expecting to get out of it. I don't know which one of these characters has had the stranger arc. Don't get me wrong, I understand that when I use the term strange, that maybe you're thinking, well, what do you mean? And obviously, what they've been doing to him has been out of line and out of historical precedent. What you're talking about there is the world building mechanic thus far in this ongoing series called America, called, a serialized tale called the United States of America. Something about it doesn't feel right. And you're absolutely right to call that out, to say, this seems hinky. This seems wrong. Because it flies in the face of prior precedent. There are a number of far more popular and relevant characters in the socio-political arena and space who talk about hierarchy and hypocrisy when it comes to dealing with lawfare, when it comes to dealing with the political machinations of the Democratic Party versus the Republican Party versus everybody else who's standing on the outsides. Here's another thing to throw in there that again, I relate it to narrative construction. Let's take a look at the character of RFK Jr., a man who has never previously run for a publicly elected office. He has spent most of his life, his adult life, working as an environmental lawyer and concentrating on uh, health and wellness of the average everyday citizen and children's health and nutritional development and the advancement and evolution of childhood illnesses that develop into adult illnesses and nutritional and dietary problems and patterns of behavior that don't make sense. This man decides that he wants to finally try to follow in the footsteps of his family legacy, the Kennedy. And when he tries to step into the ring, the political arena, the very party that his father and his uncle belonged to, and that they were the blazing, lionized avatars of at one time, tells him, no, we don't want you. Something about the world building mechanics is breaking, and we don't have an explanation as to why. That is why this all feels so strange. I hope I'm not being too esoteric with this, and maybe I am. If I am being too esoteric with it, I apologize. If it doesn't seem to make any sense, I apologize. But I don't know. It just seems off. That's all I can really think to say about it for now. I gotta get going back in here soon. When it comes to books, sliding off of using the mixed metaphor of politics with storytelling, um, I am a fan every now and again of looking for media tie-ins, such as comic books based on video games or video games based on films or cartoons or books based on video games or um, books based on TV shows or film series. And the other day, I found myself curious, and I went and I tracked down a book, or there are a set of books that are tie-ins to a long-running film series that I was a fan of when I was younger. It's a cheesy ass series known as Friday the 13th. Now, every physical copy of this book that I could look up, whether it be on eBay, thrift books, Acker books, uh, um, Lund Press, and even Waterstones, every physical copy, no matter how beat up it was, because the book is so rare, the lowest priced cop edition that I was able to find, they wanted nearly $300 for it. Thankfully, the book is available in PDF edition on that I was able to purchase through Books a Lot, and the PDF edition cost me $15. I haven't had to pay $15 for a PDF of a book in a long fucking time. Sorry to grumble or cuss, but I haven't had to pay that much for a digital book in a long fucking time. Because Books Alive, I've been on that service since it was in beta testing, before it went live on the internet about 13, 14 years ago. I was one of the testers of the site. So I have a free lifetime membership there. I get credits every month that I'm allowed to turn in to use towards the purchase of books. So every few months, I'll run up and use I'll run up a bunch of credits tokens, and then I'll turn them in and just grab a bunch of books, older ones for the most part. But they did not have this book available for purchase through credit units or tokens. They required an actual debit card purchase. So it's like, fuck. Okay, you know what? I'll do it. I'll buy it. Um, so the book is entitled Friday the 13th, The Church of the Divine Psychopath. And it is the first in a set of books based on the films published in 2005 by Scott Phillips. I started reading it yesterday, and I was originally just going to read it for leisure, but I found myself pausing, going back and grabbing my review notes notebook. I am going to end up doing an analytical reading of the book. I am like 29 pages in right now. Surprisingly, thus far, it's actually really good. And I'll get to more. I'll talk about that at a later date when I'll ultimately end up doing a review of the book and letting you folks know my thoughts on it. But anyhow, that's going to do it for me for tonight's break time stream. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I ask that you take care of yourselves, and as always, keep reading.